let's get into the unit. What's it about? Unit 3 is what I like to call the tools of nutrition that we can use to help us make good and informed choices about what we eat. The tools of nutrition, more importantly, help you determine what food choices you should make to meet your nutritional requirements. The unit defines a lot of acronyms. For example, RDA, EAR, EER, AMDR, UL, and AI. Yes, it could be called alphabet soup, that flavor of Campbell's soup you ate as a kid. I mentioned your nutritional requirements, which is defined as the smallest amount of a nutrient that maintains a defined level of nutritional health. When this level isn't maintained, nutrient deficiency diseases can occur, something we do not want to have happen. The nutrient needs that each of us has is influenced by our age, whether we are male or female, our health status, how much activity we get, and how old we are. Someone who's in their 20s will have different needs than someone in their 80s. The best place to begin the discussion of all these acronyms is with the Dietary Reference Intakes, or the DRIs. These are specific to the U.S. Many countries of the world, as well as the World Health Organization, have their own DRIs. They include energy and nutrient standards for different age groups and are used for diet planning and evaluation for groups at an aggregate level. As you can see in the slide, they encompass a number of nutrient standards which we're going to discuss. You may see the recommended dietary allowances, or the RDA, mentioned in articles about nutrition and health. They are the standards used by dietitians to recommend daily intakes for individuals and groups. Notice RDAs allow for a large margin of safety, 97 to 98% of the population. In other words, those recommendations will cover the nutritional needs of 97 to 98% of the population. Compare this to the EARs, which is the amount of a nutrient that meets the needs of only 50% of people. EARs are used by scientists to set a specific nutrient recommendation. AIs, or adequate intakes, are set when scientists don't have enough information to establish an RDA. The intake amounts are likely to prevent deficiencies until more research is completed. ULs, or tolerable upper level intakes, are the highest average amount that's unlikely to be harmful to a person. Intakes above the UL increase risk of toxicity disorder. We'll talk more about AIs and ULs when we study vitamins and minerals. Slide 10 shows us acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges, or AMDRs. The numbers you see on the slide are for adequate intakes of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, shown in percentages of your total caloric intake. These percentages can be useful if you want to see if your individual diet meets the recommended balance of macro and nutrients. Remember that macronutrients are those that provide us with energy. All of the standards and recommendations that we have seen so far are shown in Appendix E of your e-text. I encourage you to take a look at the standards. You can see that they vary by age group and in some cases by health status. These standards are determined by teams of nutrition researchers who serve on the Food and Nutrition Board, which is part of the Institute of Medicine in the National Academies of Science. They are reviewed every 5 to 10 years. Food guides like the dietary guidelines for Americans, are provided by the government and other groups and are based on the dietary reference intakes that we just reviewed, but they're a little more consumer friendly. The dietary guidelines recommend that our usual eating patterns or dietary intake include a variety of vegetables and fruits, whole grains, low-fat dairy products, a variety of protein-containing foods, and healthy fat choices. Overall, we should limit sources of animal fats, added sugars, and sodium. Is everyone successful in following these recommendations? Well, when you analyze your dietary intake this week, you will know how well you are doing in this regard. But don't get upset if your intake doesn't match what's recommended. Improving or changing what you eat is a work in progress. For all of these standards, the researchers who review and update them keep in mind the overall health of the public and include recommendations that address nutrients of current public concern, such as fiber, vitamin D, calcium, potassium, and iron. Research shows that these nutrients are lacking in the food intakes of many people. We've just now reviewed many different sets of standards, and you may be a bit overwhelmed. Maybe you're asking yourself, what should I, as a student, use to help me follow a good eating pattern? Well, I think My Plate is the most practical. You'll get an opportunity to utilize this food guide in the assignments that you complete after you've finished your personal nutrient analysis. Note the 5 food groups on the myplate.gov logo. You'll see there's a spot for fruits, vegetables, protein, grains, and dairy. Notice, however, that on the myplate.gov logo, fats and empty calorie foods don't have a group. But we all eat them, right? My Plate realistically states that they are, quote, allowed, but only in limited quantities, unquote. And as an aside, I'd like to remind everyone that the best practice is to never totally eliminate a food from your diet, unless it's for medical reasons. It's better to figure out a way to limit that food, especially if it's something that you really like and you might overeat. Put those chips and cookies in the freezer in the garage or somewhere out of sight. Yes, you still know where they are, but they're out of sight. That helps. Okay, now let's move on to what's on a food label. Just like My Plate, this source of nutrition information is very useful and helpful to us, not to mention very accessible. Let's take a look at what's on a food label. The Food and Drug Administration regulates what must be on the label, but companies can include other information as well. This slide shows you what is required on every food item that's produced in the U.S. today. First, you'll see what the food is. In this case, the name of the food is diced tomatoes, and the weight or volume of the food in the container. Again, we look on the slide and we see that the net weight is 14.5 ounces. On the nutrition facts portion of the label, we see the serving size at the very top, 1/2 cup. We see the number of servings per container, in this case 3.5. And we also see the calories per serving, 25. Under nutrients, we see total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium, total carbohydrates, fiber, total sugars, and protein. Beneath that list, you see vitamin D and the minerals calcium, iron, and potassium. Recommendations for all the nutrients specified on food labels are based on public health concerns. Before we go to the next slide, I should mention that the list of ingredients in the product are required to be on a food label as well. I think the list of ingredients is a very important part of the label. Keep in mind that the ingredient present in the greatest amount is listed first. For example, if you're looking at a container of fruit juice and the first ingredient is sugar or water, then you can assume there is not much actual fruit in this product. The list of ingredients actually tells you what you are really paying for. Is it water, sugar, or fruit juice? And also, how healthy is it? If you look closely at the food label on the prior slide, you see that the nutrients are listed as a percent of DV, or daily value. Daily values are a simplified version of the RDA, or the recommended dietary allowances, and are based on 2,000 calorie per day diet. Their purpose is to help us compare one product from another. On some labels, you will see food claims. As in the example here, we see that the wheat thins have reduced fat, which is a nutrient content claim. The FDA determines the requirements for all types of health claims in labels. In this case, for a product to be labeled as reduced fat, a serving must contain at least 25% less fat than the reference food, which is regular wheat thins. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about dietary supplements. As you can see in the slide, supplements are regulated by the government, but not in the same way food is regulated. The regulations specify that dietary supplements can be a vitamin, a mineral, an herbal or other plant product, or an amino acid. They can only be taken by mouth. They cannot be injected. In the United States, a total of $30 billion is spent per year on dietary supplements. What are the most popular dietary supplements? Well, you can see them listed here on the slide. The most popular is the multivitamin, multi-mineral. The second is fish oil. Then we see glucosamine and/or chondroitin, probiotics, coenzyme Q10, and melatonin. That's the top 6. So what's on a dietary supplement label? They're quite similar to food labels, listing the name of the product, the ingredients, percent daily values, etc. But they also include a disclaimer that the FDA has decided on in terms of the wording, etc. The statement reads as follows. This statement has been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. If you have a bottle of vitamins at home, take a look. I think you'll see this disclaimer as well. As you can see in this slide, safety is a concern for those who take vitamin and mineral supplements. For those who take a megadose, there is a risk of nutrient toxicity. This is especially important when taking niacin, vitamin B6, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D, iron, calcium, and selenium. Again, we'll talk about these more in the chapter on vitamins and minerals. Safety is also a concern if you take herbal supplements. And that is because some of the herbs taken in large doses can be poisonous. There also can be interactions with other drugs that you take, as well as side effects. So the final question for today is, should you take dietary supplements? Here are a series of questions you should ask yourself. First, is the supplement necessary to your health? Could you get along without it? Can you eat food instead of taking supplements to get the same nutrients? Do you have certain health conditions like diabetes that might be affected? Are you pregnant? Are you older in age? Have you done your research on this supplement? There's research that you also can do